Okay, so I hope you all can see my screen. No, not yet. Can you all see my screen now?
Yep.
Okay. Thanks everyone. So as I mentioned earlier, that we will be keeping this session as a two-way session. Like I'll be giving some, I'll be sharing the knowledge which I have. Please feel free to share your knowledge about the concept, and if you don't agree with any of the point, please feel free to share with it. Okay, and another point that this sharing Saturday is a concept started by QA Tech Hub. I'm the author of QA Tech Hub website and also the founder of this. My idea is to share whatever knowledge I have and build a community of QAs so that we can we can help each other in finding jobs and helping each other to work together. And another idea is that in the start, I'll keep all the sessions as online sessions so that we build a community around it. And once we have a good community, we'll also start doing offline sessions in different cities of India, starting from Delhi NCR, then moving to Pune, Mumbai, Hyderabad, Chennai, Kolkata. These are some of the cities which are in my radar. Okay, as of now. So let me quickly give a brief about myself. So, hi everyone, my name is Saurabh Dhingra. I have total 8 years of experience of automation testing, 2+ years of DevOps experience. And in DevOps, when I say my main experience is in Azure Cloud, and apart from that, like the CICD, which is also a topic that I've done through Jenkins, and one of the tool which is very closely related to Azure is VSTS. So I have worked in those areas from last 2 years. Then worked with multiple MNCs and startups. Have 4+ years of teaching experience. Have taken more than 70 live batches of Selenium and API testing. Have taught more than 1,500 students as of now. I'm also author of this QA Tech Hub website. You can mail me at saurabh@qatechhub.com, and LinkedIn profile is here. Okay, there are some ways you can connect to QA Tech Hub. I hope you all have joined the meetup group of QA Tech Hub. Apart from that, there is a closed Facebook group where we have around 450 QAs joined. So feel free to join that. I'll share these links after the class. There we basically discuss about the latest technologies, tools which are coming up, not only in the QA but also into the DevOps. Then I also have a WhatsApp group where again we discuss these things. So if you feel free to join this. Okay, starting with the agenda of today's session. So I'll be explaining the CICD. CICD stands for continuous integration, continuous delivery, and deployment. Then I'll be talking about what test automation takes, like where test automation fits in the CICD. Then we'll do a practical. We'll be setting up Jenkins. We'll be running up Selenium code through Jenkins, and we'll be running up the JMeter code through Jenkins. Okay, I think this part I added, but I think I don't want to be able to do this. And then we can have the Q&As. Okay, so starting with this agenda, let's first discuss about the CI/CD. So for that, I have one of the article written long back about CI/CD, continuous integration, delivery, and deployment. So let's first talk about how the in the old days software delivery used to happen and why we moved to this CI/CD concept. Okay. Now, in the old ways of software delivery, most of the time was spent in software development. The whole application is delivered without even running it for once, and is then deployed for testing phase. Okay, so recall your, like, when we were working in the old way of working, that is the waterfall way of working. And that I remember that when we had any deployment, that used to happen after a long time of development. Okay, remember in waterfall model, developers do their development for some time, maybe 3 months, 4 months duration, and then they give us the build to test. We deploy that on one of the application, and this deployment part was generally taken by operations team, which were sitting somewhere in a different room or in different cubicles. Then they used to deploy that on the servers, right? I remember I was working with HCL Technologies in my initial days. So we had big rooms with so many ACs, and those had the servers where this operation people used to deploy the code. And I do remember that initially, like the first build when we used to deploy, it never worked. Like 70% of the time, it used to fail. Why? Because we were deploying the code which was written up for a 6 months duration. After 6 months of work, we or 3 months of work, we were deploying it on a environment where operation team does not know what development team is doing, and development team does not know what operation team needs. So there was a big gap, and a lot of these times build used to fail. Then there were many fixes given, and okay, the build used to work on the environment after a long duration of fixes, and then testing used to start. Then when testing was done for a large batch of softwares, there were a lot of bugs which were reported, and bugs were late in this process. And because of this, some bugs, like sometimes deployment fails, as I mentioned, sometimes it becomes difficult to find the reason of its failure also, like why it is failing. Okay. So in continuous integration, so the solution of this was like when the bugs were reported late, deployment used to fail, or the exact reason was not. These are some problems which we used to face in the old way of working. And then came this new way of working. This new concept is also known as DevOps, where development team and operation teams work together. There is a single team where developers and operations work together. And we can also say that development team has some knowledge of operations, and operation people also have some knowledge of developers. So in a whole, they are self-organizing and fully functional. Like they are cross-functional. There is a word called cross-functional. That together they have all the knowledge. Okay, and from there, this concept of continuous integration, delivery, and deployment came into picture. To explain the CICD, I'll show you this small diagram. Okay, so CICD, this is a pipeline which we have. We call this a pipeline. Okay, uh, this pipeline involves all the three steps. The very first step is this build, unit test, code matrix, versioning. Okay, so this concept is known as CI. Okay, I'll quickly draw it. So this part is RCI. Okay, continuous integration, where the very first step which happens is build. When this happens, okay. Now, in case of continuous integration, what happened was in continuous integration, when in the application that you are working upon, on every code commit by a developer, a build is created automatically. On that build, unit test cases are run. Then code matrices are calculated. Code matrices means how good your code is. Like there is a very good tool in market called SonarQube. Most of the organization do use SonarQube, like whether you are using Java, PHP, or .NET. SonarQube works for all. What that SonarQube do is it scans your code and find out that how quality wise how good your code is, how much unit test coverage you have done, or how much code smells are there, how many duplicate number of codes are there. These are some matrices which your SonarQube calculates, right? Then out of this, like first triggering a build, that is compiling your code. After compiling the code, running unit test cases, then running code matrices, an artifact is created. Artifact is an end product which we can take and deploy it on any environment, right? So an artifact is created and the application is deployed in the test like environment. This part is continuous integration. Now, what is the benefit? Uh, See, in the old way, we were saying that the first time the deployment used to happen after a long duration, maybe 3 months or 6 months. So we don't know what was the reason that the deployment fails. But here, for every small check-in, let's say 5 developers are working in a team, and any one of them do any check-in, what happens is it triggers a build. An automatic build is trigger, and it do all those steps which I mentioned and creates an artifact. So we have an artifact created after every check-in, so we can simply know when the build fails, if it fails, right? So the check-ins are small. Because of that, we know, okay, why, because of which commit the deployment is failing. So I don't have to search a long batch to find out the reason of its failure. Rather, I know because of let's say Saurabh's check-in on that particular day at that particular time, my build is failing, so I know where to fix the problem, right? That is what continuous integration helped us. Okay, now uh, another thing which has come in market is these days is going to the market as early as possible. Organizations are following lean process of deployment of developing softwares, right? Where they want to go to market as early as possible, not after all the requirements are fulfilled. Rather, some requirements are fulfilled, then they want to go into the market to test their idea. I'll give you a wonderful example for same how I mean everyone know about Redbus, right? Redbus is an organization which help us in booking tickets or booking bus tickets basically. Now this the concept of Redbus, the person who actually started Redbus, he wanted to try it. He wanted to first check it that whether this concept will work or not. So what he did was, even before he started developing his application, he just posted one single page every day on the website which had the duration and the timings of any bus. Let's say morning 9 o'clock from Gurgaon to Delhi a bus goes. So he just on that web page he just printed the timings of the bus, the bus number, like the number plate information, and few more information, right? So he just did that. The first thing, people started, like, he started getting traffic, people started liking it. So next concept he did was he just gave a button next to it and book now. And when you click on book now, it used to actually call it, like you can call and then book your tickets. So he didn't spend any money or anything. He first tested this idea. Then in small bunches, he started delivering the features. Okay. So these days, there is a hurry to go into market as early as possible before our competitors, so that we always have an upper hand. If we want to go as early as possible into the market, some organizations are doing every day. Like the organization for which I work, we go to production every day. If we want to have such a short duration of delivery, then we must have an infrastructure in place which can actually deploy our code. Whatever we are doing, we can deploy our code to the production. That infrastructure should be like that. Okay, so for that comes this continuous delivery thing. Continuous delivery is to do automation and integration testing on every build to catch early issues in the build, and also deploying, like before you do automation, there is also another concept called deploying it to the environments. Okay, so there are different environments which you can use. Okay, ideally speaking, there we say that there should be 7 environments before we go to the production. Okay, but that's not always possible because since we have started using clouds, or initially we used to have the servers, they are very costly. So there is a concept known as DTaP. Anyone heard of this word called DTaP before?
Yes, it's development environment, testing environment, association environment, and production environment.
Yeah. DTaP means dev, test, acceptance, right, and production, right? So these are four minimum an organization must have. Here, D is for developers, T is for QAs, where they can do their manual testing, where they can do their uh, other testing, like maybe automation they want to do. Those things they can do there. If they want to do some load testing, they can do it on acceptance, right? Or last is the production. Acceptance is generally the environment which is exactly similar to production, where generally acceptance testing is done, where user accepts the user stories or the features. Okay, so this is a minimum kind of requirement which every organization must have. Okay, though some organization has more than this. Okay, and on each type of environment they do a different type of testing. Okay, like some of the testing I've listed here. Integration tests are where you integrate more than one feature or module and then test, right? That is an integration test. Smoke test, I hope everyone knows about smoke test. Feature level test, like testing your features. Component tests. Okay, server virtualization. Service virtualization means quickly virtualizing your service to another environment. Okay, then visual tests, usability tests, manual testing is also part of it. Okay, then feature level testing by the client. This is more generally done on the acceptance testing environment which I mentioned. Okay, so here it is giving the like all the environments, but minimum you can have this dev, test, acceptance, and production. There is one environment which, like, some of the organization have UAT and pre-production as same, some have different. UAT is generally where user accepts the user stories. Your stakeholders or the people for whom we are building the product, they accept the your features. Staging in pre-production is a replica of production. Generally, it is used to test if, let's say, some defect comes on live. To replicate that, we replicate it on staging and pre-production. Okay, and then one of the testing which most of the organization do on staging and pre-production is performance test, because it's exactly the identical environment of production. Okay, so these are some of the environments and some of the types of testing which you can do on um,
Can I add something?
as a part of CD. Yeah, Ritesh, you have any point to say?
Uh, right now, most of the organizations, what they are doing that they are syncing the environment from the production to dev, production to test, and production to UT, so that they can closely monitor or they can do the real testing with the system. Because on the productions we have the different load, different numbers, different things, so they are doing same practice. I see most of the organization are doing the same.
Yeah, like we also do it, but we don't do on the UAT or automation or on dev environment. Rather, we just do it till staging in pre-production, not to others, because at any time and at any moment there can be some um, delivered user stories which may lie on your acceptance testing. I mean, not acceptance, but on the UAT testing, UAT environment or on test environment. So
Yeah, that you has to plan actually between the sprints you are working upon. Then
yeah,
let's say on the Saturday, Sunday, nobody is working that you need to sync the environment, then regression test will be happen, sanity will be happen, then environment will be ready.
yeah, I totally agree to you. We also do it, but we restrict it to staging in pre-production. But maybe in some organization they are also doing to test and UAT. One more point I want to specify here, since Ritesh mentioned this, that when you are doing this replica, also take care of something known as GDPR compliance. Like some of the organizations, if they are European based or some other countries also have some other type of restriction. So do remember to, can you all go on mute, please? Yeah, so some of this, so do take care of this GDPR compliance and all, because if let's say you are directly replicating or just taking the dump of the production database and putting it into pre-production, then you are actually exposing the database of all these production and staging to the staging environment, which might cause some problem to your organization. So what?
Yes, right.
Yeah, Ritesh, sorry, go ahead, please.
Yeah, sorry to interrupt you. We are doing the same thing because I can relate this to the financial industry I work with,
Mhm.
and in the finance industry, like I'm working with Encore, they have some compliance issues like PCI compliance. In the
Mhm.
PCI compliance, you cannot sync the environment directly, like on the information, personal information like credit card information, card numbers. You can't just directly production environment to the lower environment. In that case, what we do, we apply data masking. It's a concept of SQL Server. We apply data masking on the columns which are related to the compliance.
Yes, that was also my point. So when you are actually taking the dump of your production database, do data masking. There is a concept of data masking, and it's very clearly mentioned in the policies of those products that which all information comes under it. Like I'll tell you some of them which are under GDPR is you cannot use the name, you cannot use the email IDs and their medical records. So if let's say you are working in medical or financial things, so do take care of this step that if you are dumping the database of from production to staging, remember to mask all those informations which are critical to the client. Okay, because if they get exposed and something wrong happens, they can sue. Like European countries are very much particular about it that they don't allow this thing. Okay, so that is one point. Do remember, if let's say you're going to do the same thing, that taking the dump of production environment and putting it onto the staging environment. Okay, so these are some steps involved in the CICD. The first CD which I've covered is delivery, right? Then you can automate the last process also, that since everything passed in till the staging, then you can also deploy your application to the production. And if this process is also automated, we call it as continuous deployment. So continuous deployment extends continuous delivery. After completion of automated testing, the code is deployed to the production. That is what continuous deployment is. Okay, so this process which I mentioned now, it's an ideal process. Okay, not every organization can reach it quickly. It needs lot of changes in the mindset that okay, we can deliver as early as possible to the market. These kind of things are required. Okay, so I'm also going to show you something which I did in one of my last project. Okay, which is since we were not mature enough, we started with this process of deploying things to the production frequently. Okay, initially it was very difficult for us because we didn't have automation in place, we didn't have integration test in place. So I'll show you what we did to achieve something. And currently we are at this stage, what I'm going to show you now. Okay, so
Saurabh, I have one question. Can you move to the last thing,
yeah, quick.
CICD pipeline?
Yeah, yes.
There is a concept written capacity test, what it is in the staging and pre-production.
Capacity testing is like it's also part of your performance testing is only that how much capacity your environment can take. And
Yeah, that's equal, same, just like performance
yeah,
test.
it's part of your performance testing only.
Okay.
Okay, so this is what we actually achieve now. Okay, and this is how we have done. Okay, Now this is something which is helping us, so we are going good with it. It's like the one I'm showing you, it's a subset of what it is. Like this is the actual thing which every organization wants to achieve, and this is what we have achieved. Now this is the one which I'm showing you on the product on the slide now. Using this, actually we are delivering things every day on the production. Okay, I know it's difficult, but we are going close to it. So what we do here is, the first stage we have is the development stage. Okay, where developer works. Okay, development do their development. Okay, like a user story is given to us. We work in scrum way of working, scrum framework we are using. So we generally work in sprints, so we have 2 weeks sprint. Now in that, the first phase is the development phase, right? Then in the development phase, developer do their development and they send it to code review. Okay, now since we have a team where three of our developers are not, I mean, they are just 3 or 4 years of experience. So many a times it is required that they should follow some standards. I mean, not many a times, always it is required that they should follow the standards, but they don't always have that knowledge that what should be the ideal way of writing the code. So we have a process in place called code review. Whenever developer writes any code, the architects first step they do is they do a code review. Okay, once architects um, are fine with the code, the way of working, or whatever comments they give, developers do complete them, and then the code is merged to the main branch. Okay, dev branch. Then we do the code check-in. As soon as we do the code check-in, this CI starts. Okay, so first level of check is done at the code review level. So QA, I mean the architects do the code check-in, do the code review, give them the comment, developers complete the comment, and then code is merged to the product, which triggers a build. Okay, when the build is trigger, what happens in this step is it compiles your code. Okay, same process which I mentioned here. It compiles the code. So first step happens, that is building. Okay, so it builds the code. Then second step, it runs the unit test case. If the unit test case passes with 100%, we have kept this as strictly as 100%. Some organizations keep it 95%, but we have kept strictly to 100%. If any of your unit test case is failing, fail the build, go back, fix that, come back again. Then we measure quality. Here we have again some checks. Quality checks are there. So what kind of quality we measure? That what is your unit test coverage? So in the before previous step, we are testing that whatever unit test cases you have, they should pass 100%. Here we check what is your code coverage, like how many, what is the percentage of unit test case you have covered, and we have kept this step also as a strict 90%. That 90% of your code must be covered. Okay, if it is not, if it is less than even with 1%, we again fail that, go back, fix it. Then that creates artifacts. Okay, so wherever I mentioned trigger, that actually triggers something. Like the first was when code check-in done, so code check-in happens, it triggers this compilation of the code. Then when artifacts are created, it triggers the testing phase. Okay, what happens in testing phase is that first of all, the code is deployed on the dev environment. Remember the DTaP environment I talked about? So this is my first environment, dev environment. Where we do the deployment of the code. On that, the first level of testing we do is the integration testing. Okay, integration testing is like the product which I'm working on. It's a microservice based product where we have 4 or 5 microservices working to each other, communicating to each other. So and all these microservices are actually developed by different teams. So we have to make sure that if let's say there is a service and there is a B service, they communicate properly. That's what we call it as integration test. The first level of testing we do is integration testing. Okay, Then if that passes, then we deploy our code to the QA environment. On QA environment, we run the API automation. This is again my first step, that is API automation. Okay, I'm not sure how many of you know about that testing triangle. Okay, if not, I can quickly explain you that also. I mean, we can just revisit it. So there is something known as testing triangle. Okay, it's like this. That in the testing triangle, there are three types of tests in Agile. Basically, you can follow. The first one, the most important one, is integration test. Or, sorry, the most important one is unit test. Okay, so the first test which every product must have is unit test, because that's where the first check happens. If any defect is actually caught at unit test, that has the least impact. That is the cheapest bug, you can say, because every bug involves some cost, right? So this is the cheapest bug, you can say, or I mean, it will actually help you to reduce your cost if you're finding defects at unit test. If let's say you're not able to find unit test, then you must have integration test, where you're testing integration. Okay, then you should have your functional or UI test. Okay, if your unit tests are very good, if your after that, if your integration tests are very good, then you have to least spend on functional unit, because here the cost involved in building this functional test is more, but the return of investment you get on functional test is less, right? Because here we are actually late in finding the defects. So first level is unit, then integration, then functional. Okay, now in between this UI test and integration test, we have also come up with something known as API testing. Okay, API testing is testing the logic before it shows automation. Yeah. Testing the logic before it actually shows on the UI, because what at the backend runs, it's the APIs, right? So people these days are spending more money on API automation. Okay, unit test case, I guess most of the organizations are doing. Integration test is a costly is a not costly, it's rather difficult process. Not every organization have knowledge of integration test, and this integration test is also done by developers. Unit test is also done by developers, so they spend more money or more time in automation testing. This is also a very helpful test these days. Okay, this is a very helpful testing involved, and then we focus on UI testing. Okay, so and API automation is also easy. There are many tools available in market, like JMeter is the one. We in my organization, we are using JMeter. Then we have Rest Assured, HTTP client is there. SOAP UI is also providing automation, and these days Postman is also making its automation good by every passing day. So you can use any of these clients to do the API testing, and then comes the functional UI testing. Okay. Uh, any questions so far? Yes, Ritik.
I'm good with all the things, but one thing that you said over the code review on the last thing,
Mm-hmm.
you say most of the time now time has been changed because most of the times code review is done by the tech lead or the team lead. So now solution architect is something that they create the coding standard only, but they don't do the code reviews at all.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so as I mentioned, this is strictly according to my organization how we are doing it. Okay.
Okay.
Yeah, there can be a different process also, and yeah, since we are in agile, we are working, there is less concept of leads. Rather, there are like some organization call them solution architects, some call them architects only. We call them software architects. For us, since the developers are not very mature, they are having less experience, 2 to 3 years of experience. For them, we have made this as a mandatory thing that they have to have the code review. Okay. Again, when they'll get mature, then these will not be required, because like if you give code reviews for 6 months, they are likely to reduce every day, right? So maybe in another year we might not require it, but for now we have it.
Okay.
Yeah, so let's move on then. So I mentioned about the different type of testing. So here you can see we have code deployed on the QA environment. Then comes the API automation functional environment for us. Okay, so first we do integration test, then we do API automation, then we do functional testing, that is the UI testing. For us, these two things are done on the same environment. And also how we are managing to do both the things on the same environment is, I'll quickly give you an idea that what we do. Okay, because a lot of unwanted data will be created. So what we do is we have a concept where first we create a users. Okay, first we create accounts. Okay, in accounts we add some users, so we create some users. Okay, once users are created in these accounts, so we have some flow to test. Okay, let's say there are 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, some 5 flows to test. Okay, once all these flows are tested, then what we do is we have written certain scripts, database scripts, which cleans the data at the end. Okay, and also we are running these scripts initially also. I mean, it's the very basic steps I'm mentioning, and one can follow these in your project also. So like when I teach, and some of the people come to me that when they do automation, they have some old data in their database which causes the problem. So I told them that what you can do is, I am sure most of people are doing or following this, just reiterating the concept that first we have DB scripts which cleans the DB. Okay, some do in a way that they complete the DB, the whole DB. Okay, they just delete everything you have on database. When you can do that, when these environments which I mentioned here, they are only for your automation. This environment is only for your automation. But if it is a co-shared automation, I mean environment, if somebody else is also sharing with you, then you cannot delete everything. So like this happened with me. I had one environment which was shared by somebody. Okay, that I know it's not an ideal way, but I could not do anything because it was a budget constraint. So what I did was I modified my scripts in such a way that it deletes only the accounts and the users which I create. Like in these steps, whatever accounts and users I'm creating, I'd written my scripts to delete only these, so that it does not impact anybody else's data. So we delete this, then we start our flow, we do all the testing of the flow, and then at the end we again do. Now you must be asking that why we are deleting at 2 times. If I delete here, it is not required here, right? So sometimes what happens is, somewhere in between your flow, some unwanted exception occurs. Okay, if that's the case, then sometimes these things are skipped. I'm not saying that they always skip. You can write your code in such a way that even if you're getting any exception here, it must call these DB scripts, but once in a while it happens. So, or maybe some crash happens then. So just to be sure, doubly sure, I can say, I run these DB scripts before running everything. Most of the time they don't have anything to delete because it's already run here. But yeah, if you have, then they'll make sure that whatever users or accounts you are creating here, they're first deleted, and then we start fresh. So this is something which we follow to use the environments, like as I mentioned here, API testing and functional testing, both we do on the same. Okay, then once this is done, then we run automation security tests. So our for security, we have a separate team. What they do is they have some automation tests written, security tests, using some of their automation tools. I'm not much known about those security tests, but they do that. And once all these steps are done, then we have kept the QA approval. Okay, see, here I mentioned that all the steps must be automated, but we are not yet there. We are still in the initial stage, right? Not initial stage, I'll say, rather in mid state. So what we have done is we have some of our steps as manual. Okay, so once here a QA, I mean some senior QA gives the approval, there is a button which we use, like this process we have in VSTS, and VSTS there are some triggers available, and one of the trigger is manual trigger. So manually I get an email every day, and if I approve it, then only it goes to the staging environment. Otherwise it stops here. Okay, so this is till the testing phase. This is what we do, the testing. Okay, now we have some more testing also involved, which I'll explain you in some time. Okay, yes, you have some question? I see your hand raised.
Yeah, so the problem that you have mentioned of creating a DB script, just wanted to add, this can be possible if you are the only one that is taking care of automation, probably because the project that I've been working, it's a big project where we have multiple teams involved. And we share some common functions. For example, I'm associated with gaming domain, so we have divided we have 4 verticals. So the first vertical is taking care of player registration and all other things. The second team is taking care of the games that a player can play. So we have different teams catering to different automation goals. So in that case, having a common DB script will create chaos among teams. So what we have done is we have, while implementing our framework, we have, mentioned that we have, point out some common, steps that every team is using. For example, a games team, in order to play a game, they need to have a player like registered with them and assign some amount to that player in the wallet. Okay, so from automation perspective, the core team which I've been a part of, we have implemented that in PDD, and we have coded a specific steps like I register a new player, and the code is common. And if any other team that need to test their specific functionality, they need to follow a specific flow. That is, they need to register a player, and then they need to assign some amount to that player in a wallet. So in that case, we are just making the code independent of each other. So the one approach that you are saying, I have followed that approach when I was the only person who's taking care of automation, and I know that nobody else is is owning the automation. But in my current project, that is not the case. So the either is we need to communicate with each other team, and then come to a conclusion that we are creating a DB script. So can you give me the details of all the things that you need, which I believe is a problem, because there might be the cases when something changes from their flow, then again we need to go back and revisit the script and add those specific things. So in that case, we have defined some common functions that can be used by any team, and in that case a fresh installation or fresh registration happens. In our case, a player registered, that has been used by the bonus team, the games team, and the registration team. So we have defined a step when I register a new player, and every team can use that step, and they can perform their end-to-end automation as per their task.
Yeah. Yeah, that's perfectly portrait here. See, I also mentioned that it depends on what is your project stage. I'm just giving you one idea, and another perspective Om gave us that where he has some inter-team dependency or inter-project dependency, and because of that they cannot actually delete these initially everything. They have to coordinate, and they need something which is required by both of them. So yeah, we can keep them as it is, and then for our own zone we can write scripts to delete whatever we create as term. Okay, so again depends on what is the project situation, and that's the exact reason why I've started these sharing Sundays, so that we can get somebody else perspective also. Okay, so I shared one way, Om shared another way, so maybe you can now imagine that what you can use in your project. Thank you so much for this, Om, to giving up another perspective about it. Yeah, so yeah, let's move on. Next was that after this automation is done, QA gives the approval, then it goes to the staging environment. So we have only like 3 environment with us. First was the dev environment where the integration tests happen. Then second environment where the API automation and functional test happens. And the next environment for us is the staging. And last is the production. Okay. So in staging environment, what we do the first the smoke test, just to make sure that all the applications are running properly, they're loading properly after deploying the code. And then one testing we do is the performance testing, because production for us, the staging environment of the UAT environment is exactly a replica of production. So to get the real insights about the performance of our application, we do the performance testing here. And we also do some level of manual testing. Okay, manual testing is also done here also, like on this environment also. I guess it's not mentioned in this step, but we do manual testing here also, and then some level of manual testing we do also here, which is nothing but the user acceptance testing. Okay, so this manual testing is nothing but user acceptance testing, and once that is done, then we give a demo, or basically the code review happens, not code review, sprint review happens, and we give demo of our functionality to the product owner. This PO is the product owner. If product owner approves it, then it goes and deploys on the production. So this is the whole CI/CD for us.
So just one quick question. So why do you have PO approval at a later stage? Because it is not recommended to have PO approval at the later stage, because once PO approves the story, the PO approves the story, then only we used to get stories and the developers start developing, right? So
okay. It should be product owner instead of product operations.
Okay. I'll like, I guess some confusion. So product approval means not the user story approval; it's the feature approval. Like, we are done with the feature, whatever was required, whatever was expected out of the feature. If that is achieved, then only PO approves it and it goes to the production. Okay, the first PO approval happens even before development starts. So that is, we call it as PO acceptance, PO user story acceptance, you can say. So it's a different approval. It's like, I'm ready with everything, and then I want to deploy it to the production. In between all these steps, we keep giving in sprint demos to the product owner. Does that answer your question?
Yeah. So right. If you are following Agile, we do have storytelling sessions. So in that we cover whatever features we have developed, and we give a demo. It's show and tell that we used to happen.
Yeah. So that's even before the development phase for us. Okay, so
okay.
Here product owner writes the user story, gives the acceptance criteria, then we discuss it. That's everything before development phase.
Okay, but show and tell is something give a demo of the feature that you have developed. So I don't know maybe how this can happen prior your development.
I agree totally with this point, because as per the Scrum, we have two things. One is product owner, that is following the story creation. So and what features actually business is looking for. So they prioritize the task. And product operation is basically the like way Om is saying that it should be way like they are the provers what we are sending to the productions.
Yeah,
They
yeah.
are just a
So
prover. Post, it's a post development stage. It's not a pre-development stage.
yeah. So like Ritesh, what you're mentioning, for that we have something known as CDLs, client delivery leads. So you call them product operation manager, I guess, but we call them CDLs.
Yeah, every company different has different naming or different way of working.
Yes.
But
So
some ways that we should have product owners and product operations.
yeah.
That's
So last product owner approval is a check, which is that product owner approves everything you have developed. It meets all the business criterias, and then we are deploying it to the production. It's just that check. Okay. Again, it might not be valid for your, but just an idea I'm giving you that how it happens in some organizations. Okay.
okay.
Yeah. So yeah, this is about the whole flow, how it happens, and or I mean, uh, in my organization, and it is actually the whole infrastructure we need to go to production every day, and we are going to production every day because of all these things in place. And I'll give you one small fact. I mean, I'm not sure how many of you know about it, but yeah, in some of the organization, they are actually achieving everyday delivery. I know about Amazon, they are like deploying 5 or 6 builds in a minute or in a second, somewhere close to that. So that is only possible because if you have such an infrastructure in place. Yes, Jagdish, you have some question. I guess you have raised your hand.
Yes. So, Saurabh, what about the backup plan where we can suitable place we can sort of take a backup for the any jar, any DB script, this kind of thing.
Okay, so there are two things in this where what we do is before deploying any code to any environment, dev environment or QA environment, we take like for DBs we have continuous backups which are going on. Like for my, especially for my production environment and for my staging environment, we have some like our code is made basically on Azure. So Azure has just one trigger which we have to add to take the regular DB backups. That's one thing. Second thing, if you're talking about the backups, means the rollback. If you're talking about the rollback feature, what does rollback feature means for others? Rollback feature is like if let's say I deploy it on QA environment, and let's say API automation failed in the initial stage only, then how to take your code back to the older one. Okay, so at each deployment, sorry, at after all these automation level testings we have, there are triggers available. What those triggers do is, if let's say anywhere these fails, then that trigger initiates and they takes the last stable build and just deploy that. Okay, and in that deployment part only, the DB script changes are also mentioned. So that's what we do to take the rollback. Was your question related to rollback, Jagdish?
Yes, correct. So, is it automatically you have to mention rollback from the last established build? Yeah, it should be a manual process.
So for the staging, we have it automatic, because staging is a very important environment for us. All others are manual for us, but you can, like, it's just a trigger. You can keep it automatic only also.
Saurabh, can I speak on that?
Okay, thank you.
Yep, yes, please.
And for the rollback, especially how market is working. Let's suppose you are creating one table, new table, and you are making couple of store procedure changes. and you find at the latest stage of testing, you find there is an issue with the release or something, then you need to roll out all of the changes. So how you will do that? So this is your question. In the case of SQL script, every developer who is working on their stories will provide a rollback script.
Yes.
Let's say for create table, that will be a drop table script because we need to delete the table. For the store procedure changes, that will be a previous version of your store procedure, how it goes. But it should be automatic. You just need to trigger a CICD run. You need to build your application. Again, you need to run the pipeline using that backup script, and it will automatically will be done.
Yes, exactly same thing we are doing. So for the DB scripts, see, code deploying code again is nothing, because at the artifact level we will be having the versions. We will be having multiple version available for us, right? So redeploying any old artifact is not an issue. Problem comes when, especially with the DBs. So in the DB scripts, as Ritesh mentioned correctly, we also do the exact same thing, that whatever stored procedure we are writing or whatever DB scripts we are writing, in that DB scripts also there is a rollback mechanism mentioned, which is also automated. So if, let's say, at any moment of time I say that I want version, like currently version 4 is there, I want version 3. So version 3 will start deploying, and it also takes care of which stored procedure or scripts has to run. We call it as a DB initializer. I mean, in my organization, we have a term called DB initializer. So that DB initializer actually takes care of redeploying the code to the older stage, and that's what is rollback for us. Yeah. So you also have any question? I guess you have raised your hand.
Yeah, so just one quick question, because you said that you are going to production every single day. So as per my experience, your organization needs to be so mature to have a, everyday deployment to production.
Mm-hmm.
So how are you, focusing on that? And moreover, I personally feel that when you are following agile, so after every 2 weeks you have a 1 week, you go to production. So when you say you are going every day to production, so how are things, or maybe how are you developing things and testing within the same day, and how are your organization doing all those things?
Yeah. So the main thing required when we say we are going every day on production is this automation, which I have mentioned. I mean, the highlighted. Okay. It was very difficult initially, I'll say. And whatever problems you mentioned, exactly the same problems we faced every day, I'll say. Okay. Because what happened was, the organization for which I'm working on, there was some chaos actually, and we were not able to actually deploy once in a 2 sprints time also. I mean, 2 weeks time, like in a sprints time also. So uh, we analyzed it, we retrospect us, and then we found that let's put a target to the developers that we have to go every day on production. Anyhow, by hook or by crook, we have to go on production every day. Okay. uh, Find out the problems. What are the problems? So the first problem, we found that we don't have infrastructure in place, so we built this infrastructure. Okay. We were on Azure, so no problem was there. Like Azure provides a wonderful tool called VSTS. So this complete building this complete infrastructure where we can have multiple environments, where we can have this whole flow ready, that as soon as developer check-ins the code, it goes to the production without any manual intervention required, or if manual intervention is required, that should be just one click. Okay. So we built this infrastructure first. That was our first priority. Once that was done, it took us almost 2 months, because we have around 6 teams and there are around 20 microservices, which I know at least. So for 20 microservices doing all these things, and then giving them the knowledge also, because there were a couple people who only knew about VSTS, learning curve was there, but we achieved this in 2 months time, 2 months or 2.5 months time. After that, next step was at product owner's place. Okay, so whatever feature we used to get, we started and like looking onto that feature, that how we can break that feature in such a small level, that that particular user story or work item, whatever you're calling, can be completed in a day. Okay, like I'll give you a very simple example. Let's
Yeah,
say,
so my focus was only on this part, how, you manage to, code a piece of functionality within less than 1 day, because that's how, that is where your problem occurs, because unless and until you have matured, team, and I do have mature team where I've been working with more than 16 years of people, and we are not able to, go to production every day. So how did you manage?
yeah, so main part for us came when we started uh, like slicing our user stories into very small point. Okay, I'll tell you how small we have done. I know initially it was not recommended, but I mean not recommended, not say, I'll say, but yeah, this is what I tell. I'll tell you very simple example. Say for example, you have to build a form. Okay, a form is there, a web form is there, and you have to deploy it on the production. Okay, so what we did was, there is a backend team who develops the API. Okay, there is a front end team who develops the form. Okay, and then database scripts, one person writes the database scripts if required. So we started slicing the user stories like this, that the first step we built was just an API. Okay, that API do nothing but takes input from the user and add it to the database. So the first user story was adding the or whatever required inputs are to the database. Only add. Then
Yeah, so just I'm sorry for interrupting you. Even if you are developing an API,
Mhm.
so for me it's not even a one pointer, because so if you are saying only inserting in the database, I see the complexity as well, because you need to take care of and different things like security as well, the load as well, and the various combinations of input output.
I
So
think point is not here that only for 1 day. It can be took by 4 days. Let's assume we have 50 developers, and they on every other day one developer will be ready with his story. So rather than waiting for other stories, we should be pushing to the production. But it doesn't matter that how much time we are taking to develop, for 4 days, 5 days, 6 days.
yeah, so actually you have also answered this. I guess you have all already answered this. See, what we when we say we are going to production every day, what I mean is, let me take out a white paper. Yeah, let's say.
That also depends on the team. Like AWS or Amazon has a very big team.
Yeah. So
yeah,
actually,
yeah. So
it's like,
if you have multiple teams, and and every team is working on a 2 week sprint with not overlapping with each other, then it makes sense for me that at a certain day some other some team would have their deployment. So if you are a common team and you are working on a microservices as well, then probably how did you manage? Or before that, how did you manage? I would like to go back. When you do sprint planning, like how many story points do you pick for a specific sprint, and how do you calculate the velocity of your team? Because going to production is something probably the biggest challenge. you know
yeah. So when we say that we are going to production every day, it does not mean that one single feature is going to production every day. One point here was that uh, writing your user stories in such a small vertically sliced thing, that okay, if a particular part is done, it can go to production. And for us, within our team, whole team, like the complete team we have, it's a cross-functional team which has all the required, I'll say, required skills. So you mentioned about, let's say, developers. We have developers in team. We have QAs. We have people who knows how to deploy the code. We have people who, we have automation in place. Our securities is also in place. Security person is also there in our team. So all the required skills are actually there within the team. Okay, it's a team which is full of everyone. Okay, then like we have a team of 8 people where there are 4 backend developers. So those 4 backend developers, if let's say 2 of them are working on one feature and 2 of them are working on the second feature, so it's like they together were able to deliver once in a day. Maybe the first feature started working here, okay, let's say, and second feature started maybe next day, okay, but on a whole they were able to deploy something at a particular, let's say here the first day ends. The first day, let's say this feature, this particular user story was done, was tested and was deployed to production. Then second day this was deployed to the production, and like this. So it's not about every feature going, because sometimes there comes features, like I'll mention one feature. There came a feature which had a very big change, and that was not at all possible to go on production without doing the whole regression testing. Okay, even after automation, we required some level of manual regression. So that was not something which was delivered on in one day. Rather, it took 2 weeks for us. But in between that, there was things available which were sliced in such a way that they were easily moved to the production. And yeah, there is one more concept we follow. We have something known as feature toggling. What does feature toggling means? That there will be some features which will be deployed to the production, but will not be available for users. Rather, will be available only for specific people, like for the product owners only, or for only for the testing of some group of users. We call them as super users. So those super user tested, if everything is fine business wise, then we make it available for everyone. So we were using feature toggle also to go to production every day. Now, idea was that whatever you're building every day, that should also not break your production. So to make sure that, first unit test is required, second feature toggle was required. Getting the point? And yeah, I know it's a little difficult to adapt that you can go live every day. Start finding out the problems you face and then start solving them, and then you will one day you will actually reach to a point. Now we are in a stage where we once or twice in a 2 weeks time we are not able to deploy, but otherwise we go to production every day. I hope this was useful.
Yep. And like, how much do you like rely on your API automation?
Fully.
So
our API automation is like the main thing for us. Right?
So if your API automation fails, you have that ability to say that we are not going to production because we have some failing tests, right?
We even I'm also an automation architect, so we sometimes check for the false failure of the functional tests, the UI tests. I mean, we check, retest manually if some functional test fails. But on API automation, we have such a strong hold because we are building it from long now. We have around 700 to 750 APIs which are automated as of now, and they cover the scenarios, proper end-to-end scenarios. And if anything is failing in API automation, we have to just make sure that everything is working fine. We have a process where it tries it for 3 times before actually marking it fail. So those retry processes are in place, but we have full faith in our API automation because they are developed in a way that if they are failing, that means actually the build is failed. But yeah, functional test, I do agree that they do report false failure. And I do teach Selenium, but yeah, I have more confidence in API automation space, uh, being being the rigorous user of API. If you have actually written it in a stable way, I'll share one instance with you, especially for this API automation. Uh, okay, like in last of my organization, I used to work with an MNC. Uh, Not in last organization itself. There I was hired as a manual QA. It is around 8 years, no, 7 years back, 6 years back story. I was hired as a manual QA, and then we were moved to an automation team because somebody left in the automation team and there was no one to take care. So they hired me, and that was how I started with the automation actually. And in that team, what we were doing was we were using the API automation, and we started with API automation, and we were just uh, automating some 120 test cases, which were part of the regression test, which was performed by a team of 5 people working for uh, 1 week to test one build. And every month we used to get 4 builds. So every month those people used to test same thing for a week and then mark that build as successful. So you can see there was a uh, delay of 1 week's time to go to the production or to go to the live, right? So what automation team did was, in a time span of 3.5 months, we understood the whole functionality of that by that team, SIT team, that was system integration testing team. We understand the functionality and we started automating it through API. Okay. Initially there were problems like a tool was not very mature at that time. It's a long backstory. So JMeter was the tool. We found some solution to fix it, and after 3.5 months we had the API testing available. Okay, and we used to still do the manual testing and also used to run the this API automation. That 1 week's time was actually reduced to 1.5 hours time. We used to run every day, and for 1 month we found that manually there were less defects found. Through automation there were more defects found, and there were like only one or two, no, 5 to 6% false failures were there. It was such a stable tool, and based on that, actually that whole team of 5 members were dissolved. They were moved to the Scrum team. That whole team was not required because automation was in place. Okay, so API testing are very strong if you write them well. Use some good tool like Rest Assured. Frankly speaking, I don't like Rest Assured much because again, it involves a lot of coding. But I love JMeter. JMeter, though, is considered as a JMeter is considered as a performance testing tool, but it's very, very useful when you use it for API automation. Okay, so they have all the assertions in place. It's very easy to use. Just right click, copy, duplicate, and things are done. So using JMeter, we have written it, and it's a very powerful tool for us.
So, your automation is being written into JMeter, because personally, I don't feel that you should be dependent on any tool, because if you are dependent on tool, that means when you are running your automated build, you need to have that JMeter in place, right? And you have to run. So I prefer writing your code, because I have been also in my current organization, like heavily relying on API automation using Microsoft Tech Stack. So I'm using REST Sharp, and probably we have around 1,000 test cases which have been implemented in BDD, and we are more focused toward API automation. And the point you mentioned, that we found a lot of defects with the API, and I do agree with that. So probably although I haven't worked on JMeter for functional or API testing, because I have used it only for load testing. That was around 2-3 years back. So if you are using JMeter, I personally feel that you are like limiting or maybe putting a restriction that you need to have JMeter as well on your machine on which you are running, right?
Yeah, in that case, you also need REST Sharp, if I'm not wrong, because REST Sharp
Yeah, yeah. So ResSharp is not a tool. First thing, it's
it's a,
DLL. It's
it's
a
a,
DLL. So when you code it, when you write your code, you can mention the uh, package part, and when you build your application, all the packages will get deployed from NuGet. So you just need the dependency that you need to have either NuGet access, or you can have your NuGet implemented on your local, on your organization as well. So we do have our local NuGet, where some of the DLLs that have been built by our team has been put here, and we reference those in our project whenever we have to make a reference to that.
so what's the difference? Like you need like in when you're using REST Sharp, you need REST Sharp, right? Yeah, REST Sharp.
It's just a plain DLL, not a tool. So I'm not.
Demeter
So
is also such same thing. Like it's just a set of libraries which you just have to put it on your system, and that's it. You can run it through the command line. I mean, you don't need a manual intervention or anything. It you can run your JMeter scripts through. Actually, that was also into agenda today, but I think we don't have time, so we cannot do it. But what you have to do is there will be a jar file. You just have to run it like Java hyphen jar, give the value.
yep.
That's it. That's it. Nothing extra is required. And writing scripts in JMeter is so easy that the people who don't have knowledge of Java, because it's very difficult for to find people who have Java knowledge, right?
No,
And
but I feel that if you see the current trend, so probably the market is going towards that. If you don't code, probably you are not needed, because that's why we have a designation as that. So now we are saying we are changing the QA automation engineers into an SDET.
mhm.
So they are basically performing the same task, but SDET is not a QA automation engineer. They are responsible for both writing or maybe fixing the code as well, and probably incorporating or taking ownership of automation as well. So in my current team, where I've been working, we have mature people who are developing the microservices as well, and also writing the spec flow tests to test that API as well. So we are not restricting them that you are a developer, so you need to develop only, because that's the trend that I see in future.
Yeah,
So if we still say a QA automation, then probably we are not at the right place. Probably we need to dig down and check the code as well. If we are not able to debug the code, then it will be a problem for us in near future.
yeah. So actually, you're speaking in terms of personal interest of a QA, that what should be the where they want to reach. But you also have to check the other part of the I mean other part of, or you can say another end of uh, uh, how should I say, coin. In the second, you can also see that organization also has to spend some money and time into it, right? So I totally agree with you that yes, these days the scenario is that everyone is moving towards SDET profile, where they also have to do the fixing, they also have to do some development, write the automation, and then test it thoroughly. Okay, but if in an organization they're comfortable using tools which provides UI, where writing automation is easy, and where they can use their people who don't want to learn uh, automation, they just want to be in that comfort zone which where they are, and what's the harm in using those tools? There is no harm in that, right? I totally agree from your perspective that looking at the future, one should start learning automation, and one should start spending time uh, in learning these tools which are like rest assured, rest sharp. I totally agree. We also started doing. But then looking at the benefit for the organization, we found that building uh, my whole framework was in rest assured was taking more time compared to JMeter. JMeter was quick. It was giving me results in quick way. Um, it was like it was also very stable. I had a good experience in JMeter, so I automated in that. It's again depends on requirement and on the organization where you're working on. So nothing is wrong, nothing is right. It just depends on the organization you are.
Yep, agreed. And just one last question. So probably which domain are you working on, and what is the need of going to production, that frequently?
Okay, so we are working in agile, like we are building a product which is a project management tool. Okay, it's very similar to Jira, and we are in nascent stage, and we not nascent stage I'll say, but we have a product, and every week we give demos. Every Wednesday we give demos to our clients, and they come up with these features every day. So what we want to achieve is that we want to show our clients or our prospects that uh, yes, we have a capability to deliver as early as possible. Okay, so that it brings a trust in them, and we are in a stage where we are competing with the tools which are very mature, like Jira. Jira is one of the most mature tools. So if we don't deliver fast, we will be out of market soon, because there are giants in this market. So we want to build that trust in our prospects that we have a capability to build every day. It's all business driven, nothing anything like that. It's all business driven. So we want to bring that trust into the market that okay, we have a capability of delivering fast. If you'll be requiring any feature any day, and if it makes sense, we will be able to deliver it quickly. And that's the reason we are actually getting clients. I hope this clears the idea that why there is a hurry of going every day.
Yep, that's fine. Okay,
Because
thank
when
you.
people talk about everyday delivery, they mostly talk in e-commerce business, because e-commerce are the people who need to go to bring something new every day, right? But yeah, for us, business clients and their uh, achieving the business clients is the reason we're doing this. Okay. All right, so I hope this was helpful. Let's time box it, because all of us are working in Scrum. Scrum says one thing, time box it. Even though we are left with two topics, but it's fine. I can record them anytime and can share with you all. So how was it? What was this? Any feedback? Om, Ritesh, Hargun, Jagdish. I guess you four are left earlier. Others were two time boxed. They left exactly at 12:30.
So maybe so maybe if you can include some practical thing as well. I know that it's there, but if you can share it and list down how what other things that you have developed, or maybe give a small video of how you have done all those things, that would
Uh,
be really.
Actually speaking, I cannot share those because that's my organization's thing. I mean, they're critical for us. So,
No,
but yeah,
not from organization. Maybe
a
maybe you can
sample one.
explain it through a sample code. I'm not asking about
Yeah, yeah.
using live code.
Yeah, actually, I had that into the this, but I never thought that we will have such a good crowd, that we'll have such good engaging discussions. It was just a pilot, frankly speaking. It's my first sharing Saturday, which sharing Sunday, which I've done. So I had this into agenda, but yeah, since it is not complete, we will cover it in the next session for sure. So I'll be using Jenkins for that. Okay, we have Ritesh. He has very good exposure in Azure. If he's interested, he can also take it in Azure. I also have good experience in Azure. I'll see if I can prepare something in Azure also. So the same whole process which I have explained, just a second. Okay, this whole process which I have explained, how we can achieve each of these steps, Jenkins or through Azure. I'll see when I can do that. All right. Any other questions? Any other feedback? I totally agree that it should be practical. I'll consider it. Will adapt
One
for.
thing, can we connect over the WhatsApp group or something so that in the future we have
Sure.
updates
Sure.
directly?
I'll share all the details. To connect. Okay. And yeah, Ritesh, I'm also looking forward for the meetup you are going to organize. I'll definitely join it. Please share the details whenever you.
And I would want that you to be present one of the good topics from your side as well.
Sure. 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 We can connect
So
on this.
you can drop your number to me.
Sure.
What I'm planning is to join 91 Springboard.
Yeah, 91 Springboard, I know.
So I'm planning to do the session here.
Sure, sure, Ritesh. So maybe others can also join. I'll definitely. I mean, I'm more than willing to join. Yeah.
Yes, and apart from that, any developer or QA who wants to join my WhatsApp group, they can join that, and that will be a totally technical discussion, not user discussions.
Mm-hmm.
That will be a totally just like today we discussed about the Docker, how we can implement Docker, how we can create Docker with the my DevOps tool. So you can join that group as well.
Sure, sure, sure.
So,
Yeah, please share the details.
Yeah.
so Saurabh, actually, I am looking for some Jenkins stuff kind of thing because right now I am not here, guys. I am just developer and just move it into the automation process. I am
Mm-hmm.
in TFS and Jenkins setup because we are working for big data projects.
Mm-hmm.
So just move it on this side. So when we are plan for the Jenkins setup and all kind of things, so I think that it would be helpful to
So
me.
let me plan it in maybe the next or the next to next weekend. So my plan is to have at least two or three these sharing Sundays. So this was first one. I think it for me it is very successful because this is
Yes.
the discussion I want to have. So I'll share the details in the meetup group itself for the next, and it will be soon. It will. I'll not take much time to delay it. I'll say.
Sure, 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 sure.
Okay. All right, then. Thank you so much for
Thank
joining
you.
the session. Please
It's
share
a
your,
nice.
yeah, please
Nice.
share your feedback on the meetup group so that others can also start taking
Sure,
initiative.
sure.
Start
Okay. Thank you,
joining.
Gaurav. Thank you, sir.
Yeah. Thanks, and I'll share this recording as well. Yeah, I have recorded this session, so I'll share the recording as soon as it will be available. Thanks everyone for joining the session. It was uh, insightful. Thanks everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye bye.